old Ibanez is from the 70s or 80s, has X bracing, is built like a Martin, so we'll go with the Martin factory specs. I made my own little card with all the different specs that I want to use. We'll check the relief, which is adjusting the truss rod so we get some relief, a slight bow to the neck, so when the strings vibrate, there's room in the middle so they don't flap on the board. We check the height at the 12th fret. We make sure this isn't too high on the saddle. And what's my next one? Check the nut at the 1st fret, and it gives you the measurements. And we'll check here. First up, set the relief. So the relief will be in here. That's the first measurement we do. Now we're going to sight down the neck to get an idea of seeing what condition the neck is in. So you line up your eye and you look down the line here, but you want to sight down to see if there's any like weird waviness to it. A lot of times on acoustic guitar, the tongue of the fretboard that overlaps the soundboard may go up, may rise, and that's not good because when you are fretting in the upper register, it's gonna buzz like crazy. That's another story, not for this video, but that might require deeper repair. If you notice that it's kind of diving down, then that's okay because you'll have some clearance and you can work with that. So hopefully your guitar looks pretty straight as you sight down. You look down both sides, flip it over, get your eye up close, and like you're lining up, and just look down here to see if which way it's going. You probably will see a slight bow going down. Let's get our flashlight out, and there's the nut. Some guitars have the truss rod adjustment here just inside the sound hole, and then some are at the end of the neck. What we're gonna do is loosen the truss rod just a bit to add more relief to the neck. Go to your kit and get the capo, and you put it on the 1st fret. Press down on the last fret, and then right in here, 7th to 9th fret will be your relief measurement. And in order to adjust the relief measurement, we adjust the truss rod, which is a scary thing at the very beginning. But once you do it a few times, just take your time and don't turn the wrench too far. I'll show you in a minute. So the relief 010 to 005 on an acoustic. And you hold down the very last fret with another hand and push down, and you measure around the 7th to 9th fret. And you can see it's pretty good on this. It said between 10 and 5. It's rubbing on 10 slightly, so it's not any higher than 10. So that's pretty good. And then we check the treble side. Let's say I want a little more relief. That means I want to let the strings pull on the neck and bow it a little more this way. So the middle will go back and this side will go up. Ooh, you got to get the right wrench. 5mm fits in here. So what we want to do when we tighten it, the end of the neck is going to go backwards and pull, put more tension on the neck and pull it backwards, which brings the string closer to the fret. So what we want to do is loosen it so it'll let the neck bow just a little more to give us more relief inside here, and it will buzz less. But then it actually makes the action slightly higher. Just to give you an idea of how to adjust. So you get that in here and just give it not much of a turn, like 1/8. I'm not going to turn this very much. Then we tune it back up the pitch. Put our capo on. So it's pressing on the 1st fret and the last fret. And now we just put a little bit more of a gap in there. So if you want to lower the gap, you might have a big space in here, and that's where you want to tighten your truss rod, like 1/8 of a turn or 1/4 turn each time, and then tune it back up. So when you go to tighten the truss rod, you got to make sure and loosen the string slightly, because you don't want to put more tension than the guitar is designed for. That's something I found when I find these guitars at the thrift store or something, and the bridge is lifting and people don't know what happened. It's usually because they had the strings too tight. So you need to be sure you're tuning to pitch, whatever is concert pitch, which is A440 for the A string. And actually A440 is on most tuners, you can find it. There's an A. It's actually a little high. And then that gets you in the ballpark. So my card tells me height, 12th fret. Low E, 3/32 to 7/64. So the low E I have on this side. 3/32. It's about 2.3 millimeters. So just over 2 millimeters. So here's the 12th fret. And we want to be around 2. This is actually kind of high. It's about 3 millimeters. We can actually come down slightly on that side. And the other one is, we want to go 1/16 of an inch. 1/16 of an inch is 1.587. 1.5 millimeters. 12th fret, right here. It's right here. Yeah, that's a little high too. I can go down about 0.5 millimeter. Doesn't sound like much, but on guitars, it's like 0.5 mile. So what we're gonna do is loosen the strings, take off the saddle, and come down 0.5 millimeter on that side. 2.3 on the millimeters. That's 1, 2, 3. It's really about 0.5 millimeter on both sides. Not quite as much on the bass side, because you don't want to get too close on the bass. But this could stand to come down, and you'll notice it once you get some material off the bottom of the saddle to let that string sit down just a little closer. Just loosen the strings and get this out of here, and we'll mark it with a pencil and sand down the bottom. Looks like we're going to just put a fresh set of strings because the E string popped when I was taking it off. So let's go ahead and take them all off. Okay, now we get these pins out, and sometimes the pins are hard to get out and you don't want to gouge them. String winders come with this little thing, and sometimes they're hard to grab, but sometimes they work. But sometimes they don't. Another way to help is you actually just push down on the string, and that, because what's happening, this is pulling up on the pin and kind of jamming it into the wood underneath. So if you push down, get a grip on it and push down, then you can come back up and pull that pin right out. And I'll put the pins over here in my little gig bag so I don't lose them. Pins, pegs, push it down. And then they pop right out. I used to wrestle with these guys a lot. On the 12 string, they're super hard to get out. But there we go, popped right out. I saved these for my wife because she uses them for different jewelry projects. If I don't save them, then that means I'm not thinking of her, which I'm always thinking of her. This we can pull out. This actually has a shim under it. So what if I just took that shim out? What if that's making it too high right there? This little, it's like a little sliver of plastic. How thick is this thing? I'll do with my ruler. Like, how thick is this shim? Is this like 0.5 millimeter? It's actually not a whole millimeter. That might even make the difference. I'm going to put this back on, put the new strings. You keep in mind which side was the bass, and pop it back in there, and we'll see if that improves the action any. Might have been lucky on this. Let's find the new strings and put them on. So here's the scenario if you had to take off a little bit. And in our case on this guitar, it had a shim in there, so I'm taking the shim out, which to me made the action too high. But let's say you had to sand it down in order to shave off that millimeter. You get a piece of Sandpaper, I'm just using 100. Like 100 or 120 is good. And then you put a mark on the bottom how much you want to shave off. We're not going to shave off any to speak of here, but that's what you do. You want to rub and sand and keep that flat on the flat surface. And then you'll be able to take down the action to whatever height. You just do a little bit at a time, and then you reinstall it and measure again until you get it to the right height. So this is already there. I'm going to go ahead and give it a quick polish on both sides because it's kind of a little grungy. And just polish it up. Yeah, here is my low side. I'll go with these Ernie Ball Earthwoods. It's a lighter gauge, 11 on the high E. Take this and I give it just a slight bend. I don't want to kink it, but I want to give it a slight bend at the end. This way, when I push the pin down over it, you want the slot of the pin to go over the string. That little curve will kind of sit under there and then wedge it into the wood, so you get a nice tight fit. Put it in there. And push it down. You can pull up on a little bit, but push down while you pull up. Try not to kink anything. It's very dusty, this guitar. While we got this all off, let's clean up the dust. Just make sure these are nice and snug still. Don't over tighten and strip them. We could go ahead and clean up the fretboard. I have this Dunlap polish and cleaner. This helps put a little bit of moisture back into the neck and keep things clean. I just use a soft cloth. So you get it tuned to pitch, and then I go in and I just push on the strings here. And what this does is kind of snugs things down and tightens up any gaps that may still be occurring. I'll do the same here. I'll push pretty snug, not too much, and make sure those are all pushed in nicely. And then I go through and I just pull slightly, not too hard, just to help them settle a little more. And then we go through and tune it again. I want it to be closer to 3 millimeters. It's like 2.5 now. That's a little closer to what I want. And we'll flip it over. It's just below 2. And for me, I like my action a little high, so I'm going to leave it there. So taking that shim out, this was under the saddle. You wouldn't think it was much, but it was enough. It's a little closer, you notice it. Now we're going to measure the distance from the top of the fret to the bottom of the string. You can start by just getting a feel for how stiff it is. You can kind of see that this is moving quite a bit. This might be a little high, and so is the A. The D is, the G is, the B is. The high E isn't too bad, but it's still a bit high probably to the specs. So we'll look at my specs again for acoustic setup, and I had nut first fret 024 and 016. So those are in inches, thousandths of an inch. So I get these guys out. This is more of my point of view. So put that down against, and you can see there's still a bit of a gap. So this one can come down. So I take these two for the high string. 0.012 plus 0.004 equals 0.016. And I measure here. And you can still feel a gap. So all of these got to come down just a little. And we do that by cutting these grooves slightly deeper. The deeper we go, we actually got to take some off the top because we don't want the string to be riding down inside it. You want the string to kind of stick up a little bit. We're looking at it from the end. Here's the nut. You know, here's the string slots. So let's pretend this is like a big close-up. Here's the string. So you never want the slot to be higher than the string like that. You always want the slot to be about half of what the string is. Also, avoid sharp edges on the slot. So I use these nut files, also from StewMac, but you can get nut files. And there's a couple alternatives that are possible to use to get you started, and I'll show you those. Yeah, that's a bit of a gap. It's a little stiff. So that's how we can lower the action. On this side, we already covered the height we like. We covered the height we like here by lowering the saddle slightly. And now we're gonna get after the nut. StewMac version of the nut file. So they're tapered files that will bite in to the grooves, and you can work them so they're deeper. You can also use, here's a couple of choices that I've used before I got those, like an X-Acto hobby saw. It's very thin on one edge to get you started. And then I used jeweler's files. This one is tapered too. This is very similar to one of these, and you could do nut slots this way when you're cutting the slot, and then you could roll it back and forth like that to get it wider. And you can also use the little round ones for the fatter strings. This jeweler's file that's rounded, it's almost pointy enough even for the high string. These little triangle jeweler's files too. In a pinch, you can cut a slot a little deeper. This is like a good investment if you're going to be doing a lot of that. And if you're just in a pinch and you want to just lower the action a little more economical and accessible versions. And even a nail file, you know, the little metal nail file that's on the clippers, you could get a little slot going. But you don't want to be too sloppy because it doesn't want to be loose and buzz. It's got to be a good little seat for those strings. First, we loosen the strings. Loosen that so you can get it off of there. And I'm also going to take a little piece of tape and slide it under here in case I bounce with the end of the file. I don't want to mark up the headstock. And the reason I just don't take all the strings off is I'm just going to do one at a time. And you work your way across. This string is like a 042 or 05 something. The 050 will work for this string here. So we move it aside. We want to go down at an angle because you want the front of the nut to be the point where it falls off the nut, and that'll be the height of the string. And then you want to angle it down so the string rolls over the nut and is pulled onto the post. You can see the post here. Here we go. So I just take little strokes, and you can see some of the dust fall off. And then I roll back and forth to round it so I don't have any sharp corners, because that's where you can snag the string and it'll break sooner. Just try that. Little steps. That's closer. It's still a little high. I can still see a gap. Loosen it. Pull it off. Get the nut file. A little more pressure, but not too much, because you don't want to go too far. In the case of they're already way too deep, you can fill them with super glue. I'm setting up a classical guitar for left-handed, so I wanted to fill the gaps. So you can fill the gaps with super glue and then go in and file them down to the depth you want. So in the case of being too deep, you can back up and repair that. But in this case, we want to go deeper. More, roll it. Now that I'm a lot deeper, we're going to have to take the top of this off. But we'll do that at the end after we are happy with how deep they are. Oh, that's starting to feel pretty good right there. Here we go. Well, not much at all. That's it. That's all I dare to go. Roll it back, catch those corners. There you go, and that's it. A 1/6 to the touch. So I don't want to go any lower than that. I just pull all these aside. I use this painter's tape a lot because it doesn't stay stuck. I call it a 4-in-hand. That's what I've seen it called online. It's rounded on one side and flat on the other. And then it's got coarse and fine on both sides. So in this case, I'm not going to use the coarse because sometimes when you already have grooves, the coarse will grab a chunk and bite it off, and then you'll have like this end broken off, and then you got to file a new nut. So I'll use the smooth side. And just knock down the top. And this is a radius neck, so you want to follow the radius. And just knock down the material until you don't want the grooves to disappear, all your hard work, but you don't want them to be too deep. They're still going to be the right depth. And I hit the corners too, because when you're playing, sometimes these little corners will poke you. So I round those back too as I go. But leave this front edge nice and clean. You don't want to round off the front of it. That has to be straight up and down. It's starting to come off. And then you want to roll it towards the back so you get a nice rounded, angled shape on the back of the nut. Some nuts are made of plastic. This one is a bone nut, like cow bone. You can buy the blanks at the guitar shop. The big box guitar stores or your little local guitar shop or online. I'm going to go ahead and put affiliate links to all the stuff I'm using. So if you order something, I get a little commission. And when I say little, that's what it is. It's not a lot, in fact. I'm still still working on this stuff. I just make the videos because guitars are fun. But hopefully these tools will help you do the thing you want to do with your guitar. check. Go ahead and take the tape off. And you can get an idea of how deep it's going even before you put tension on the strings. Like that E looks a lot better. The D side still kind of deep. That looks better. So my treble and bass side actually are looking pretty good, and the middle still seems a little deep. So I'll keep working it. This E is just fine. So it's this area right here. In fact, I'm going to mark it with a pencil where I want to come down just a little more. I'm not going to touch the both E sides so much. Move those aside. Put some tape down. Get my cutters. Just want to cut these strings off because they're kind of in my way. But these are just in the way. And take down those pencil lines. And lead it up and round it towards the back. I get a little piece of the 100 sandpaper and work on rounding it some more. Hit those corners so they don't poke me. And then I use the 400 and polish it up. To clean out the dust, I just go in with an X-Acto and just kind of clean out the dust. And maybe use the back side, you know, the flat part of the X-Acto, and clean out that dust that acquired in there. And now we could see they're not so deep, and this works for me. We got the PF5NT Ibanez set up to review. We adjusted the truss rod, which created a little more relief in the neck, so there's room for the strings to vibrate under here. We adjusted the height of the saddle so the strings are a little closer to the 12th fret for easier playability. And we also brought the nut slot down slightly by filing the grooves and then shaping the top so the strings aren't so buried inside the channel. We want to make sure they're about halfway down. So now it plays to the touch. And in the previous video, here's a link above, I leveled and crowned the frets and replaced the broken nut. I just got it playing again and replaced this guy with a laminated wood pick guard, which kind of, to me, helps the tone a little bit because now this is wood that vibrates along with the rest of the wood. So it's got a good tone to it. And that's our setup video for acoustic guitar. This method will work on just about any steel string dreadnought acoustic. And thanks for watching.